How Sugar Changes the Human Brain, The Ultimate Guide to Kicking Sugar. This is by Flora Zhao, Epoch Times. In this series, she's going to explore the good and bad sugars and sweeteners, including popular natural ones, uncover the unexpected outcomes of cutting out sugar, and discover the ultimate way to achieve this. Our brains often instinctively crave sugar, and it could be a slice of cake during times of stress, a bar of chocolate when bored, or a sweetened coffee when needing a pick-me-up, and the inability to quit sugar may not stem from a lack of willpower, but rather from not fully grasping the nature of sugar and not finding the most effective methods to quit. Sweet cravings, the instinct for survival and growth. Sugar is very important for our body and our brain, and I think this is where a lot of the difficulty in cutting out sugar lies, says Jessica Russo, clinical psychologist from Philadelphia, telling Epoch Times during the interview. Sugar serves as the primary energy source for every cell in our body, and much of the food we eat is broken down into various sugars. The brain is the most energy demanding organ, which uses about half of all sugars energy in the body. I didn't even know that. We're biologically driven towards sweet foods, as this is a survival mechanism, Ms. Russo said, explaining that in nature, sweet-tasting foods are generally healthy, while toxic foods may taste bitter, and spoiled or rotten foods may taste sour, both of which lack sweetness. Therefore, when we taste something sweet, our brains signal, "Oh, this is good." Besides helping us identify safe food, sweetness also plays a role in human survival and growth. We see babies being born with the ability to detect sweet taste and prefer it. Julia Minella, scientist at the Monell Clinical Census Center in Philadelphia, during an interview said, "It indicates that sweetness is associated with the quality of breast milk, which can attract infants to suckle." There is evidence to suggest that children's preference for sweet foods may be linked to their higher caloric needs during the growth stage, which typically continues from infancy until the end of puberty, she said. Now, the effect of sugar on our brains. When we consume sugar, the receptors on our tongues send sweet signals to the brains, triggering the release of dopamine, which can induce feelings of joy and happiness. "We taste with our brains," Minella said. "Sweetness makes us feel good because these signals are sent to various parts of the brain, many of which are associated with rewards." She said, "Our brain pathways used are significant for pleasure, memory, and reward." This means that when we engage in activities and trigger dopamine release, we experience joy from memories and look forward to doing it again. In the brain, it has very specific actions, and it's the most important molecule in the brain that's involved in bringing about well-being, said Kenneth Bloom, a renowned scientist with a doctorate in neuropharmacology. "Dopamine can also counteract stress," said Mr. Bloom, who is professor at the Western University of Health Science Graduate School of Biomedical Science and a part-time professor at the University of Vermont and Wright University. "When you have stress, the dopamine is released 100 times above the normal rate. It can block the action of stress hormones such as adrenaline." However, Mr. Bloom emphasized the importance of maintaining a balance for this crucial molecule, otherwise the brain could suffer severe negative consequences. Many people are unaware that excessive sugar consumption can lead to consequences very similar to drug abuse. Mr. Bloom explains that excessive sugar consumption can trigger acute dopamine release. He said it's like abusing alcohol or other drugs of abuse. Over time, it can result in a chronic decrease in the dopamine levels. Consequently, individuals may seek larger quantities of sugar to experience the same level of pleasure, eventually leading to an addictive state where they consume more and more. When you consume a large amount of refined sugar, your brain lights up like a pinball machine due to the intense release of dopamine, said James D. Nicolantonio, a cardiovascular research scientist and doctor of pharmacy at St. Luke's Mid-American Heart Institute in Kansas City, Missouri. When ingesting refined sugar, the sweet receptors signal the brain's reward system and more effectively than when eating fruit. The levels of dopamine released by the brain far exceed what we can handle. In 2023, a study published in the journal Nature revealed that when a person drinks water or is injected with saline, the brain remains relatively calm. However, when administering the sucrose solution or injecting with cocaine, multiple regions of the brain's neurons become activated, highlighted in the image as we see, and multiple brain regions that respond to sugar signals also exhibit responses to cocaine signals. Our research shows that similarly, both additive and non-additive rewards are processed by our brains, both on the whole brain scale and on a cellular level, said Anna Beroun, study lead author, and the head of the Laboratory of Neuronal Plasticity at the Nanki EMBL Center of Excellence for Neuroplasticity and Brain Disorders, Brain City, of the Nanki Institute of Experimental Biology and Polish Academy of Sciences in Warsaw, Poland. Sugar, food becomes addictive if we value it over other rewards. Is sugar more addictive than drugs? Sugar is irresistibly alluring, not only because it stimulates the brain to produce dopamine, which brings joy, but also because it triggers the production of endogenous opioids in the brain, which can lead to addiction and dependence. Mr. Bloom said that the brain has glucose receptors, and when they're stimulated by sugar, it triggers a series of signaling pathways that ultimately lead to the production of addictive substances. This mechanism is inherently present so that if you abuse sugar, you're going to order the brain reward circuitry in a negative way, as if you use heroin, he said. An experiment revealed that mice fed large amounts of sugar intermittently exhibited withdrawal symptoms when injected with a drug that blocks opioids. These symptoms include teeth chattering, forepaw tremors, and even head shakes. Can you imagine? Sugar's effect on the brain not only shares similarities with drugs, but also in certain circumstances is even more alluring. Over the years, French researchers have conducted a series of animal experiments with the results revealing that when given the choice between cocaine and sucrose, rodents consistently preferred sucrose over cocaine. This preference held even for mice previously addicted to cocaine before the experiments. When we overconsume sugar, there is a release of dopamine and endogenous opioids that cause a high, but when we get a low, if we do this over a prolonged period of time, this can lead to dependency on sugar, especially in those who are vulnerable, said Mr. Di Nicolantonio, summarizing the addictive mechanism of sugar. When there is a deficiency of dopamine and endogenous opioids, one may feel sad, confused, sluggish, and unable to concentrate, all of which can further drive the desire to consume more sugar. Additionally, numerous human experiments have demonstrated the link between sugar and addiction. For example, a prospective observational study published in Addiction Biology in 2021 revealed that a significant portion of the individuals with alcohol use disorder, 40%, experienced an increasing craving for sugar during their inpatient alcohol detoxification. Additionally, a study published in the journal Addiction showed that children with a family history of alcoholism and depression were likelier to prefer intense sweetness. On average, these children opted for water with sucrose concentration of 24%, equivalent to about 14 teaspoons of sugar in a glass of water. Can you imagine? More than twice the sugar concentration found in regular soda water. In contrast, children without such familial backgrounds preferred water with a sucrose concentration of 18%. Know your sugars, the key to overcoming addiction. Sugar and the brain share an innate strong connection. Sugar and the brain have a strong connection. Unfortunately, modern diets are filled with highly refined sugars that evoke drug-like allure. In fact, the sweetness we consume today differs significantly from what our ancestors once had. Ms. Russo vividly describes the body and brain's conflicting views on sugar with a lively scene, noting that our bodies resist certain sugars while are more receptive to others. She says the brain says we need sugar and we must have sugar. We can't survive without it. On the other hand, the body disagrees, saying we don't like all types of sugars. There is an ancient Chinese saying, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. To quit sugar, one must first understand sugar. However, the truth is, some sugars and sweet substances are natural and even beneficial to the body. And this is part 1 of The Ultimate Guide to Kicking Sugar from Flora Sauer Epoch Times on Collective Spark. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.